My beloved child, I call to you right in the middle of life's noise, not to pull you away from everything you are carrying, and not to make you feel as though you must escape your life. I call to you because you have been walking for too long without returning to your true center. You keep moving, keep doing, keep enduring, keep holding yourself together. Yet a deepest part of you has slowly fallen behind, as if your soul has been trying to catch up with you. That is why today I touch you with a call so gentle, yet strong enough for you to hear, even while everything around you is in turmoil. I do not need you to make a spectacle to prove your faith. I need you to pause for just one breath, so you can remember where you belong, where you are headed, and what has truly been carrying you through these past days. You believe that if you do not react immediately, you will miss something. You believe that if you do not keep scrolling, keep moving, keep doing, everything will fall into a void. But my child, it is precisely because you have lived for so long in a state of constant chasing that you have lost the ability to stay. Do not scroll past is not a command meant to frighten you. It is an invitation to stop sliding away from yourself. There are moments when you scroll past a message and only skim the words. But there are moments when, in scrolling past, you are passing by a knock at the door of your spirit, a knock which, if ignored, means you are not merely skipping a piece of text, but missing an opportunity for your soul to be realigned. I do not speak to you as one who threatens, saying, "If you turn away, I will abandon you." I am not wounded by your indifference the way humans are wounded. I speak as a father who sees his child exhausted, weary, fractured in places no one else can see, and I know that if you keep scrolling past, you may scroll past the very sign meant to save you. You may have wondered why your heart has been racing more often lately, why there are moments when you are sitting still, yet your chest feels heavy, why a single message can make you restless, why you wake up already feeling as though you have not rested. You try to explain it away with many reasons. Then you blame yourself for being weak, for being unstable, for having too little faith. But listen to me, not every racing heartbeat is fear. Some quickened beats are the sound of your soul being awakened from numbness. Some moments when the atmosphere around you feels heavy are not because I wish to press you down, but because a truth is drawing near, and truth always carries weight. You have grown accustomed to living in layers of noise. So when truth touches you, it feels heavy. But heavy does not mean bad. Heavy simply means real. And I am leading you back to that reality, not to frighten you, but to awaken you. Hear me clearly. My child, I do not come to increase pressure. I come to remove pressure from the places where you have been carrying it the wrong way. I do not come to turn your life into a stage of drama. I come to bring you back to the center where you do not have to perform, strain, prove yourself, or get it right. That center is where you can breathe without asking permission, where you can speak truth without fear of judgment, where you can weep without shame. You have lived behind defenses for so long that you have forgotten your heart was never created to be locked away. It was created to live, to love, to trust, to receive, and to give. But because you fear being hurt again, you learn to rush past everything, even the good. You rush past praise because you do not believe it. You rush past help because you fear owing anyone. You rush past gentleness because you assume it will not last. You rush past hope itself because you do not want to be disappointed again. Gradually, you call this calm. But in truth, it is numbness. I do not blame you for being numb. I know you became numb because you had to protect yourself too much, for too long. I know there were days when you no longer had the strength to feel, so you chose not to feel at all. You thought that was survival. But my child, survival is not the ultimate purpose of your life. You were not born merely to endure one day after another. You were born to live with depth, with holiness, with clarity. And so I bring you to this moment, a thin door moment, where the veil between noise and stillness grows unusually light, where if you pause for just one breath, you will hear what has long been drowned out by the clamor. I do not need you to change everything today. I only need you to stay long enough to recognize, where am I drifting from? What am I running from? What am I afraid to face? The moment you dare to ask. You have already begun to come home. At times you thought that staying was a waste of time. But staying with me is precisely how you recover the time that has been leaking away. For when you drift from the center, you do much yet gain little. You speak much yet remain empty. You strive hard yet stay lost. But when you return to the center, even a single, small decision carries weight. Even a short prayer is enough to open a way. Even a quiet, unspoken yes is enough to change the atmosphere. You do not need loud sounds to believe that I am at work. Many of the deepest things I do in your life happen in stillness. You once thought miracles had to be noisy, obvious, and visible to all. But, my child, the first miracle I usually give is not an external door. The first miracle is an inner shift, a softening in your chest, a longer breath, a quieting of self-accusation, a new courage to look honestly. These are not imagined. They are your soul returning to its true axis. So when you feel your heart racing, do not rush to conclude that you are afraid. Ask instead, am I being called? When the atmosphere feels heavy, do not hurry to escape. Ask, is a truth drawing near to set me free? When you sense a shiver, a gentle warmth, a sudden stillness, do not dismiss it by saying, I must just be tired. There are subtle signs I use to tell you that I am near. I do not always come like thunder. Often, I come like breath. And if you are only used to looking for me in what is loud, you will miss me in what is deep. Today, I am teaching you something new. I am in the silence you once feared. I am in the emptiness you once avoided. I am in the pause you once called wasted. My child, this is your turning point, not first a turning of outward circumstances, but a turning of the heart. You can continue to live as before, moving fast, reacting fast, covering quickly, forgetting quickly, or you can choose another path to stay, to listen, to recognize, to return. And I tell you this, you do not have to do it alone. I was here before you realized you were lost. I walked with you through stretches of road you thought no one saw. I heard the words you never spoke aloud. I saw the nights when you lay staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone truly understood you. Today I do not come to ask how much you have failed. I come to ask you, do you want to come back? If you are willing, the door is already open. If you simply stop, you will see me right here, not at the end of your running, but in this very pause. My beloved child, when I speak to you about the battle that is taking place, I am not speaking of loud images, nor of a stage where light and darkness clash with thunder and fire. The battle I want you to recognize is far more subtle, and precisely because of that subtlety, it is dangerous. It does not happen where others can see, but where only you and your choices stand face to face. It does not force you through violence. It wears you down through exhaustion. It does not strike you with great blows, but with repeated nudges to look away, to stop feeling, to shut down, to grow numb. And in that very space, Michael stands not as a warrior displaying power to frighten you, but as a sign of quiet protection and the capacity for discernment that I placed beside you long ago. Michael does not need to swing a sword to prove authority. His presence reminds you that not every voice in your mind deserves your trust. and not every urge that pushes you forward comes from truth. There are days when you feel chaotic not because you are weak, but because you are standing between opposing currents. One pulls you back toward light, toward truth, toward life. Another whispers that you should rest by giving up, that you should close your heart to avoid pain, that you should pretend you are fine so you do not have to face what is real. Michael stands at that boundary as a reassurance that you are not abandoned in the noise. Yet, my child, he does not decide for you. He guards the space so that you can choose without being crushed. The choice remains in your hands, because true love never takes that freedom away. And before you, Jesus does not stand like a judge, holding up scales to measure merit and guilt. He stands close enough for you to sense the breath of mercy itself. He does not pull you by fear. He invites you with safety. When you are weary, he does not ask, "Why are you not stronger yet?" He asks, "Do you want to rest in me?" That closeness is precisely what the enemy fears most. Because a soul that knows it is loved is very difficult to manipulate. The enemy does not need you to rebel. It only needs you to doubt that gentleness is strength, to suspect that remaining with truth is dangerous, to believe that opening your heart is a risk. And so this battle is not centered on immediate, dramatic decisions, but on very small choices, repeated again and again. Will you dare to feel instead of freezing? Will you dare to speak truth to me instead of hiding in silence? Will you dare to stay when your soul is being touched? Or will you turn away quickly to preserve a sense of control? My child, I want you to understand this clearly. Numbness is not neutrality. Numbness is a choice, even when it is disguised as self-protection. When you do not allow yourself to feel, you think you are avoiding pain, but in truth you are also avoiding healing. This is where the battle becomes most evident, not in whether you believe that I exist, but in whether you believe that my truth is safe enough for you to remain within it. Michael does not need to defeat the enemy by force if you yourself turn away from the light. And Jesus does not compel you to return if you repeatedly choose numbness over truth. Love does not operate through coercion. It works through patient invitation. And that patience is heaven's most powerful strategy. You once thought that spiritual warfare would make you tremble. But the truth is that it often makes you drowsy. It whispers, "Nothing really matters. Later will do. Don't go deeper. Don't think too much. Don't feel too much." And little by little, you drift away from your own center without realizing it. That is why I place Michael beside you as a symbol of alertness, not to make you tense, but to keep you awake. And Jesus is there so that when you awaken and see the truth, you do not panic, you do not feel shame, and you do not run away, because there is an embrace wide enough to receive you right at the place where you recognize how far you have slipped. My child, look again at the moments when you chose numbness not to condemn yourself, but to understand what frightened you enough to close yourself off. Was it because you once trusted and were disappointed, because you once opened your heart and were abandoned, because you once hoped and things did not unfold as you expected? I know it all. And I do not see those experiences as proof that you should shut yourself down. I see them as proof that you once lived honestly. But instead of being taught how to heal, you learned how to defend yourself. And so whenever truth comes near, you do not recognize it as an opportunity. You interpret it as a threat. This battle, therefore, is not meant to wound you further. It is meant to help you discern that not all pain is the same. There is pain that destroys, and there is pain that liberates. There is pain that comes from being suffocated, and there is pain that comes from being opened after a long season of contraction. Michael stands to keep you from being swallowed by chaos, but Jesus is the one who teaches you how to walk through it. He does not say, "You will never hurt again." He says, "You will never hurt alone again." And that difference changes everything. When you know you are not alone, you do not need numbness to survive. When you know you are protected, you do not need to control everything. When you know you are loved, you can face the truth without collapsing. This is the victory heaven seeks, not domination, but the return of your soul. Therefore, my child, do not look for this battle in grand external signs. Look for it in the most ordinary moments of life, when you want to scroll past a rising emotion, when you want to dismiss a truthful thought and return to a state of false okayness, when you want to close your heart for fear of being touched. Each time you choose to remain with the truth, even just a little, you are stepping toward the light. And each time you choose numbness, you are yielding ground to darkness without a single attack being launched. I do not say this to frighten you, but to set you free. For when you clearly see where the battle truly lies, you will no longer fight in the wrong place. Beloved child, heaven does not need you to become a hero. Heaven needs you to become real. Michael guards your right to choose. Jesus guards your heart when you choose what is true. And I stand above all of this patient, never taking my eyes off you, waiting for the moment you whisper, without raising your voice, Lord, I don't want to be numb anymore. I want to come home. When those words are spoken, even softly, the battle has already begun to turn. Beloved child, I want you to hear this clearly, as though I were placing my hand on the very rhythm of your breath, so you no longer have to guess. I did not come to frighten you. I did not come to turn faith into a tense chase, where you fear doing something wrong, fear missing a step, fear not being good enough to be loved. I did not come to place a countdown clock before your eyes. I came to remove that clock from the wrist of your soul, the clock you have worn for far too long, making you live as though you are always lacking, always late, always needing to seize something before it disappears. I came not to take your peace away, but to bring you back to the place where peace begins. I came to return you to yourself and to return you to me. You have grown accustomed to thinking that coming home is a heavy confession. You imagined that returning meant bowing your head, accepting blame, listening again to the accusations you have spoken to yourself for so long. But, beloved child, coming home in me does not begin with humiliation. It begins with truth. The truth that you are tired. The truth that you have drifted. The truth that you have tried so hard you forgot why you were trying at all. The truth that there are parts of you drying out not because you are bad, but because you are thirsty. I do not judge a tree for being thirsty. I simply bring water. I do not judge a heart for being weary. I simply bring you to rest. I do not come asking, "Why are you like this?" in the voice of accusation. I come asking, "Do you want me to carry you through this?" in the voice of a father who wants to spare you from wearing yourself down any further. Beloved child, you have lived through years in which you learned to survive by separating from yourself. You learned how to make everything fine by lowering your expectations. You learned not to hope so you would not be disappointed. You learned to stay silent, to avoid conflict. You learned to skim past your inner signals so you would not have to face what frightened you. And little by little, you became someone who could endure everything, but no longer someone who was fully alive in anything. You could endure, but you could no longer feel. You could accomplish, but you could no longer connect. You could stand firm, but inside you were no longer warm. Beloved child, that was never the purpose for which I created you. I did not form you as a machine that merely does what is right. I formed you as a soul that knows how to love, how to trust, how to receive, how to give, how to walk with me in intimacy. And so the theme of this entire journey is not "you must try harder." It is "you must come home." For when you return to the center, everything else returns to its rightful place. When you return to truth, you no longer need to build false layers to hide your fear. When you return to me, you no longer have to live by your own strength as though you were abandoned in the middle of life. You thought you had lost your way because you lacked a map. But, beloved child, what you lack is not a map, it is closeness. When you are close to me, you will hear the right rhythm for your steps. When you are close to me, you will discern the difference between the push of panic and the call of purpose. When you are close to me, you will understand that right timing is not about moving faster, but about moving in the right direction. I know you have grown used to messages that tighten you from within. You are accustomed to being pulled by the fear that if you do not act immediately, you will lose everything. But I tell you this, my love does not work that way. My love does not run on panic. My love does not feed you with pressure. My love nourishes you with truth, and truth always leads you back to peace. Even when it calls you to change, you can recognize truth this way when you hear it. You are not crushed, you are opened. You are not drowned in guilt, you are lifted into hope. You are not pushed into a corner, you are led into the light. You are not forced to become someone else, you are returned to yourself, the version of you I saw from the very beginning, before wounds and noise distorted you. Beloved child, I am returning you to yourself, meaning I am restoring your ability to feel without being consumed. I am restoring gentleness without weakness, trust without naivety, peace without avoidance. I am restoring the courage to say no to what drains you and the courage to say yes to what gives you life. I am restoring the inner voice you abandoned. I am restoring the dreams you buried because you feared being laughed at. I am restoring the light you once covered because you feared making others uncomfortable. I do not return you to yourself so you may become proud. I return you so you may become free. For only when you are free can you love rightly. Only when you are free can you serve without losing yourself. Only when you are free can you step into what I have prepared without trading away your soul. And I am returning you to me, not to possess you, but so you no longer have to live like a child swimming alone in the open sea. You may be used to handling everything by yourself, bracing yourself, enduring on your own. But, beloved child, what you call strength is sometimes only a habit of isolation. You were not born for isolation. You were born for covenant, a covenant that does not erase your identity, but restores your true one. When you are in me, you are not swallowed, you expand. When you are in me, you are not diminished, you are opened wide. When you are in me, you are not controlled, you are guided. And that guidance does not steal your freedom, it frees you from invisible chains, the chains of fear, of self-blame, of the need for approval, of the endless need to prove that you are worthy. Top of form, bottom of form, my child. What I am about to lead you through in the sections ahead will not be merely words of comfort meant to make you feel better for a moment. It will be a process of recentering, a realignment of your inner axis. I will lead you to look directly at the places where you have confused faith with pressure, peace with avoidance, hope with illusion. I will teach you to discern, to remain, to open your heart in the right way, and to rebuild your outer life from an inner foundation. And you will see that true change does not begin when you gain more strength, it begins when you regain direction. A tree does not need to try to bear fruit, it needs to be planted in the right soil, watered by the right stream, placed in the right light. You are the same. I do not ask you to bear fruit in the desert of numbness. I lead you back to the river of truth. So, do not be afraid when you find yourself being touched more deeply than you expected. Do not be afraid when you realize you have drifted farther than you wanted to admit. Recognition is not a verdict, it is a doorway. And today I stand at that doorway, not with a threat, but with a promise. I am here. You do not need to do anything to make me be here. I am already here. You only need to turn your face back and let me hold you in this breath. You do not need to climb up to reach me. I have already bent down to reach you. You do not need long speeches. You only need to whisper within your heart, Lord, I want to return, and my beloved child. By that single sentence alone, you have begun to step into a new chapter, a chapter not written in panic, but in intimacy. My beloved child, you once thought that people drift away from me because of a great fall, an impulsive decision, or an unmistakable failure. But I tell you this, most departures do not begin with an explosion. They begin with a sigh. They do not start with, I am leaving you, but with, I am too busy. They do not start with, I no longer believe, but with later. And that later, repeated often enough, becomes a distance. You do not notice it because the distance is not sudden. It thickens like dust, settling one thin layer each day, until you reach out and realize that everything is no longer as it once was. You drift from the light little by little. First, through your schedule, not because schedules are evil, but because they become excuses for no longer remaining. You begin to measure the value of a day by how much you accomplish, how many goals you reach, how many responsibilities you carry through. You reassure yourself that this is maturity, effort, discipline. But my child, there is a kind of discipline that does not lead to freedom, it leads to exhaustion. When you begin to live as though everything depends on you, you quietly push me to the margins, not because you hate me, but because you fear that if you stop, everything will collapse. And so you no longer stop. You rush through days by momentum, through weeks by obligation, through months by all the things you must do. You do not leave me by intention, you leave me by rhythm. And because rhythm is what stays closest to you, it becomes the loudest voice, drowning out the gentle whisper of holiness. Then you drift further through disappointment, not dramatic disappointment, but small fragments of it, accumulating like pebbles in your pocket. A prayer you offered without seeing an immediate answer, a door you knocked on that remained silent, a person you trusted who wounded you, an opportunity you waited for that arrived later than you expected. You do not voice these disappointments because you fear that admitting them would make you seem weak in faith. So you swallow them, and when you swallow what you do not understand, it does not disappear, it turns into weight. That weight does not make you leave me outright, but it makes you hesitant to draw near. You begin to think that coming close to me requires explanations, correctness, a strength you do not currently have. You imagine that I only delight in you when you are bright and put together. You do not realize that I am a father. I do not wait for you to be clean before I embrace you. I embrace you so that you may be made clean. But because you misunderstand me, you withdraw in silence. That withdrawal is a small step, yet it opens the door to other small steps. And then comes erosion, a weariness that is not dramatic but persistent. Erosion happens when you live too long in a braced-up state without rest, when you have to be okay for too long, when you carry responsibility without a place to breathe. It drains your inspiration, your hope, your energy to love. Erosion makes you see everything through a thin fog, not painfully dark, but no longer bright. And that fog dulls your sensitivity. You still do the right things, but they no longer feel beautiful. You still go to church, still pray, still read, still listen, but everything becomes mechanical. You do not notice, because you are still doing it right. But my child, the most dangerous thing is not doing the wrong forms. The most dangerous thing is doing the right forms while your heart is no longer there. For then you think you are living by faith, but in truth you are operating a habit, and a habit without life becomes a shell. After that, you drift through comparison. Comparison is not only looking at others and seeing them ahead, it is also looking at yourself and seeing yourself behind. You begin to ask, why do they receive what I have not? Why are they at peace while I am confused? Why are they loved while I am misunderstood? At first, these questions are mere curiosity. Then they become self-doubt. When you compare, you do not only measure yourself against others, you also measure me by other people's experiences. You begin to believe that my love has ranks, that my grace has limits, that my attention toward you is less. And so you lose confidence in your place within my heart. You no longer see yourself as a child. You see yourself as a hired servant who must prove worth. And when you live as a servant, you will always be tired, because a servant does not dare to rest, does not dare to be weak, does not dare to be real. A servant only dares to do. But you are my child. You were created to abide in me, not merely to work for me. Then you drifted away through self-blame. Self-blame is the silent whip you lash yourself with whenever things do not turn out as you hoped. You blame yourself for not being good enough. You blame yourself for not being patient enough. You blame yourself for still having emotions. You blame yourself for still carrying wounds. You blame yourself for not being strong in the way you think you are supposed to be. And every time you blame yourself, you build yet another wall between you and me, because you assume that I stand on the same side as that condemnation. But, my child, I do not stand with the contempt you direct toward yourself. I do not call you by the name of failure. I call you by the name of love. I do not use your mistakes to shut doors. I use grace to open paths. Yet when you remain in self-blame for too long, you lose sensitivity to my voice. You begin to hear self-accusation louder than mercy. You grow accustomed to being pressed down, to the point that when I lift you up, it feels unfamiliar. And this is what I want you to engrave deeply within you. The most dangerous thing is not a great sin you fear being exposed. The most dangerous thing is a loss of sensitivity that you do not even notice. When you lose sensitivity, you can no longer tell what gives you life and what drains it from you. You no longer see holiness as something to be desired. You see it only as a weary standard. You no longer receive my word as bread. You experience it as an obligation. You no longer perceive my presence as a refuge. You treat it as a luxury. And when you no longer see, you stop seeking. When you stop seeking, you stop finding, not because I am hiding, but because you have grown used to passing by. You have not committed a great sin, yet you have lost the softness of your heart. You still smile, still speak, still function, but inwardly you no longer tremble before what is holy. That is the true desert, not a lack of activity, but a lack of life. My child, I am not saying this to make you panic. I am saying it so that you may awaken in peace. For when you recognize the mechanism of gradual slipping, you will no longer place vague blame on fate or on yourself. You will see clearly, this is where I grew tired and did not rest. This is where I was disappointed and did not speak. This is where I compared myself and forgot who I am. This is where I blamed myself and mistook it for humility. And when you see clearly, you can step back. You can return little by little. Just as you drifted away little by little. I do not ask you to make a great leap. I ask only that you stop right where you are and speak truthfully, Lord. I have slipped. And, my child, the moment you admit it, I am already there to hold you. For the source of light does not disappear. The source of light does not withdraw. The source of light simply waits for you to turn your face. And today, I am placing my hand gently beneath your chin, lifting your gaze, so that you remember you were not called to live in numbness. You were called to live in life. You were not called merely to endure. You were called to be rebuilt from within. And from this point on, I will lead you deeper, not to dig up pain, but to restore to you the capacity to tremble again before what is holy, the capacity to hear my voice clearly again, and the capacity to remain without running away, my beloved child. Now I want you to look directly at what you have built around your heart, not so that you will feel ashamed, nor so that you will panic and say, I am too broken. I want you to look directly so that you will stop calling a prison a home. For there are things you built with the intention of protecting yourself, but over time they became walls that confined you. You did not build them in a single night. You built them season by season, and you built them with materials you never named. Because if you named them, you would have to admit that you were hurt. You kept moving forward without stopping to face the pain. And so unhealed pain became bricks. Then you convinced yourself with walls, I will be safe. But, my child, with walls comes coldness. With walls, it is harder to be wounded, but also harder to be held. With walls, you are not pierced by the words of others, but you also no longer absorb the love I long to pour into you. Michael stands beside you, not as a judge, but as a guardian of light, one who reads the structure of that wall with the clarity of heaven, not to accuse you, but to help you see clearly that what you have called personality, habit, or strength is, in truth, a defensive construction. He looks at the wall and sees not only materials, but history. He sees that every brick is tied to a moment when you chose to withdraw rather than to open yourself. And Michael speaks with a calmness that releases you from striving. You did not build walls because you are bad. You built walls because you were once wounded while the door was open. My child, that sentence itself is already part of healing, because it restores kindness to your story. Michael touches the first brick and calls it by its true name, broken promises. There were words spoken to you in moments of warmth that vanished in the moments you needed them most. There were promises you wrapped around yourself like a warm cloak, only to find one day that it had torn, and you did not know why. There were times you trusted, and then you were left alone with the question, what did I do wrong, my child? Broken promises do more than make you sad. They teach you a false lesson that hoping is dangerous. And when you believe that false lesson, you begin to live defensively. You do not dare to expect. You do not dare to need. You do not dare to say, I want, because you fear that I want will turn into, I am disappointed. So you lay the first brick, do not trust anyone too much. And that brick, though it appears wise, hardens your heart. It does not only keep out what is harmful, it also keeps out what is good. Michael stepped toward the second brick and called it by its true name, prayers that seem to fall into silence. My child, this is the most dangerous brick of all, because it does not come from other people. It comes from how you interpreted heaven's silence. There were times when you prayed with complete sincerity, when you cried through the night, when you questioned, hoped, and waited. Then time passed without the answer you were longing for. You did not dare to say that you were disappointed with me, because you thought such a feeling would be ungrateful, a sign of weak faith. So you kept it hidden in your heart like a secret, and that secret became a distance you still believed that I am real. But you no longer believed that I am near. You began to pray like someone sending letters without daring to expect a reply. You still said, Lord, but your heart whispered, perhaps he is busy. My child, I hear that. I hear even the words you are afraid to speak. And I tell you this, my silence has never been abandonment. But when you did not understand, you used that silence as cement. You placed it into the wall and told yourself, do not hope too much. Do not expect too much. Do not place your whole heart into prayer. And so your prayers became safe, but they also became lifeless. Michael then looked at the third brick and called it by its true name, weariness, that no one understands. My child, there is a kind of tiredness. Others can see tired from working too much, tired from lack of sleep. But there is another kind of tiredness that only you know, tired from holding yourself together, tired from having to be okay, tired from enduring things you cannot explain to anyone without being misunderstood. You have carried perceptions that run very deep, while those around you only see the surface. You sensed misalignment early, felt subtle tremors others ignored, and because of that, you grew weary. But you did not dare to speak. You were afraid that if you did, people would say you were too sensitive, overthinking, or too negative. So you smiled and said, "I'm fine, my child." Your "I'm fine" has become a brick. Each time you say, "I'm fine," while a storm rages inside, you add another layer to the wall, and little by little, you begin to believe that no one is safe enough for you to open your heart to, not even me. Not because you want to doubt me, but because you have grown so accustomed to hiding that you have forgotten how to be seen. And there are many other bricks that Michael names, small ones you thought were harmless comparison that makes you feel perpetually lacking, self-blame that convinces you love must be earned through effort, moments of being misunderstood that make you reluctant to explain, rejections that make you afraid to begin again, times when you did everything right yet saw no results, leading you to suspect that your life is nothing but a series of delays. My child, all these things do not merely build a wall, they create a climate within your heart, cold, sealed, and silent. You thought that was peace, but in truth, it is a kind of freezing. I show you this not to make you panic, but to help you see the truth. This wall does not protect you from pain, it only protects you from feeling. And when you no longer feel, you also no longer receive. You no longer receive love. You no longer receive support. You no longer receive comfort. You no longer receive joy. You no longer receive guidance. My child, what the enemy truly wants is not simply for you to make one great mistake. What the enemy wants is for you to close yourself off, so that even if I stand at the door, you do not hear the knock. It wants you to become someone who is okay but not alive, right but not tender, strong but not close. But my child, I do not come to smash walls with a hammer and frighten you. I come to loosen each brick with truth and gentleness. Michael does not stand there to display his sword. His sword is first for discernment, so you can tell which brick comes from experience and which comes from a lie, which comes from true learning and which from fear. For there are lessons you need to keep, but you do not need to keep them in the form of walls. You can keep wisdom without building a prison. You can learn discernment and still remain open. You can learn boundaries and still love. You can learn caution and still trust. And I will teach you how. My child, I speak honestly to you. You do not need to tear down the wall in a single day. You only need to begin by admitting that it is there. And the moment you do, light slips through a small crack. That small crack is hope. I will enter through that opening not loudly, not forcefully, but steadily. I will touch each brick with you. I will ask you, when did you build this one? What did you believe when you placed it here? Whom were you trying to protect? And whom were you imprisoning? And you will begin to see that you were not only protecting yourself, you were confining yourself. I come to return you to love, love that does not make you foolish, does not make you weak, does not leave you as vulnerable as before. My love matures you, steadies you, teaches you where to open and when to close. My love does not demand that you tear down walls only to stand exposed before life. My love builds a home within you, a place of true peace, so you no longer need fortresses. And when you begin to remove the first brick, you will witness something miraculous. The atmosphere inside your heart changes. Your breath deepens. Your chest feels lighter. The light you thought was lost begins to return, like dawn touching a room that has been sealed shut for a very long time. My beloved child, now I want you to reset the way you understand silence. For in seasons of silence, you have carried a quiet fear that I have turned away, that your prayers have fallen into empty space, that my love has grown cold. But hear me, child, my silence has never been punishment. My silence is a shielding hand when you are not yet ready to look straight into the light. It is a safe buffer while you are learning to breathe again after repeated collisions. It is protection when the very thing you ask for, if given too soon, would break you rather than lift you. You are accustomed to a world where value is measured by immediate response. Speak, and you expect an answer. Knock, and you expect the door to open. Send, and you expect to receive. And so, when I am silent, you quickly conclude that you have been forgotten. But, my child, I do not move by the rhythm of the crowd. I move by the ripeness of the soul. There are doors that, if opened while your heart is still fractured, would not lead you into freedom, but into a new pressure. There are blessings that, if given while your identity is still fragile, would become a burden. I am silent not because I am indifferent, but because I am holding the tempo for you so that what arrives at the right moment becomes support, not a trial beyond your strength. Remember this clearly. My child, I never delay because I lack power. I delay because I see the whole picture. You see a bend in the road, I see the entire path. You see a door, I see the room behind it. You see what you lack today, I see what you will need in order to keep it tomorrow. And so, my silence is not an empty space, it is a workshop of preparation. In silence, I am adjusting the roots so the trunk will not snap. I am setting the bones so you can stand firm when the wind changes direction. I am softening the places that harden for self-protection, so that when blessing comes, you will not react with fear. You have asked me for many good things, and I do not deny that. But, my child, what is good is not always what is fitting at the moment you ask. Some good things, if they come too early, will cause you to depend on them to validate your worth. Some good things, if they come too soon, will feed the ego rather than nurture your true self. I remain silent so that your purpose is not exchanged, so that you do not confuse grace with identity. I am silent so that you learn to stand without applause, to love without immediate reward, to trust without visible proof in front of your eyes. These lessons do not weaken you, they make you solid. There is something you need to hear very clearly. My child, the right time is not when you are most impatient. The right time is when you will not break. I do not give blessings for you to endure them. I give blessings for you to live within them. And to live within them, your inner life must be stretched wide enough, soft enough, deep enough. Silence expands you without you realizing it. It forces you to face yourself when there is no noise left to hide behind. It exposes mixed motives, unnamed fears, desires that need refining. Silence is where I purify not to take joy away, but so that when joy comes, it does not lead you astray. You once thought silence was wasted time, but, my child, in silence, I am teaching you discernment. You learn to hear the small movements within your heart. You learn to recognize what comes from panic and what comes from peace. You learn to distinguish desire born of lack from longing born of life. You learn to name fear instead of letting it steer you. You learn to remain when there is no immediate reward. These are the skills of those who will carry blessing for the long term. No one teaches these things in noise. Only silence does. I know silence makes you feel exposed. It brings to the surface questions you have avoided. It reminds you of prayers that seem unanswered. It forces you to face doubts you are afraid to admit. But it is precisely there that I am very near. I am not standing at the edge watching you struggle. I am within your very breath, keeping you from sinking. I use silence to bring you back to a simple truth. You do not have to do anything for me to stay. You do not have to be right for me to love you. You do not have to be strong for me to carry you. When you understand this, you stop using outcomes to measure love. And when you stop measuring, you become free. Michael stands beside you in the silence, not to wait for a command to strike, but to guard the process. He keeps the voices of urgency from rushing in and sabotaging what is ripening. He prevents shortcuts from pulling you ahead of time. He protects the inner space where I am at work. And Jesus is very near, so near that you can feel the softening in your chest when you stop resisting. He does not push you to try harder. He invites you to remain in the truth that you are loved in this very season of waiting, to remain in the truth that nothing has been forgotten, to remain in the truth that this silence has purpose. My child, I want you to change one sentence within your heart. Instead of saying, "Heaven is silent because I am unworthy," say, "Heaven is silent because I am being prepared." Instead of, "I have been left behind," say, "I am being held back for a reason." Instead of, "Perhaps I am too late," say, "I am being timed." When you change your language, you change how you live in this season. You stop straining. You stop comparing. You stop condemning yourself. You begin to listen. And in listening, you will notice the small signals. I send a peace without explanation. A gentle light in your thoughts. A decision that feels unexpectedly right. A relationship arranged with quiet precision. These things are not loud, but they are true. I do not promise that every season of silence will feel gentle. But I promise you this, none of my silences are empty. In every waiting space, work is being done. In every moment you think, "I am not speaking," I am speaking in another way, reshaping the inner places of you so that you will not collapse when the outer seasons change. And when the appointed time arrives, you will see this clearly. What once made you restless will have become grace. What once made you doubt will have become a foundation. What once exhausted you will have become endurance. My beloved child, when blessing arrives at the right time, it does not overwhelm you. It fits. It does not force you to become someone else. It allows you to be yourself, only healed, steadier, freer. You will not need to defend yourself against it. You will not need to numb yourself in order to endure it. You will step into it with open hands and an open heart, because you were prepared in silence. And when you look back on the season of waiting, you will no longer call it a void. You will call it the grace that sheltered you. My beloved child, if you desire to return, the first door does not bear the name of shame. It bears the name of honesty. I do not place before you a narrow door that forces you to bow under the weight of self-contempt. I set before you a door low enough that all you must do is lay down your mask to step through. For what keeps you outside is not some great sin, but the habit of having to appear fine. You have grown used to entering every space with an edited version of yourself, less tired, less afraid, less doubtful, less in need of being held. You thought that was maturity. But, my child, that is only self-protection, and self-protection practiced for too long makes you forget the way home. I do not demand that you be strong immediately. I do not need you to stand tall when everything inside you is trembling. I do not ask you to speak the right words when you have not yet named your own emotions correctly. I ask only that you be real. Real with me first and then, gradually, real with yourself. You do not need to present me with a report on your spiritual life. You only need to say, "Lord, I am tired." And if tired is not yet true enough, Say, I am empty. If empty is not yet true enough, say, I am doubting. If doubting is not yet true enough, say, I am afraid of being abandoned. My child, the moment you name what truly lives within you, you have already placed one foot through the door of return. You once believed that confession was weakness. You feared that if you spoke your exhaustion, you would be seen as lacking faith. You feared that if you admitted your emptiness, you would disappoint me. You feared that if you acknowledged doubt, you would lose your place. But my child, I am not threatened by your truth. I am only blocked by your pretending. When you pretend to be fine, I cannot touch the place where you are hurting. When you pretend to be strong, I cannot lift the place where you are weak. When you pretend to believe without struggle, I cannot remain with you in the questions that have no answers yet. Confession does not make you smaller before me. Confession places you at your true size, and that is the size I can fully hold. My child, there are days when you wake up feeling as though you have run very far without knowing where you are running to. You complete your tasks. You smile. You respond. You care for others, and yet, inside, there is a nameless emptiness. You have tried to fill it with busyness, with discipline, with new goals. But that emptiness is not filled by effort, it is filled by presence. And presence begins the moment you speak honestly. I am empty is not a verdict, it is an invitation. It says, there is space here for you to enter. I do not come to ask why you are empty. I come to stay in that emptiness with you, until it is no longer cold. There are other days when a quiet doubt rises within you. Does God truly hear me? You are afraid of that question. So you quickly silence it with memorized answers. You say what is correct, but not what is true. My child, doubt does not distance you from me, hiding doubt does. I am not afraid of your questions. I am afraid that you might believe you must remain silent in order to be loved. When you bring doubt into the light, it loses its power. When you keep it in the shadows, it grows into a wall. I do not need you to resolve your questions before coming to me. I need you to bring them whole, unedited, so that I may be with you in the process of finding answers. And then there is the deepest fear, the one you rarely dare to name, the fear of being abandoned. You fear that if you are not good enough, I will leave. You fear that if you are weak, I will grow weary of you. You fear that if you are slow, I will choose someone else. This fear does not always appear as panic. Often it shows itself as caution. You keep your distance so that if you are left, it will hurt less. You do not dare to need too much, so that if your need is unmet, you will not collapse. You call this wisdom, but in truth it is a wound steering your steps. My child, I do not come to accuse you for being afraid. I come to say this slowly, clearly, and without ambiguity. I do not leave you because you are real. I am only pushed away when you believe you must hide. Confession, therefore, is not the listing of faults. Confession is placing the truth down between you and me without fear of being crushed. Confession is stopping long enough to say, I am not okay in the way I have tried to appear. Confession is allowing me to see what you have hidden, so that I may heal what you cannot heal by yourself. I do not use confession to bring you down. I use confession to realign you. For when you name correctly what is happening, you stop fighting shadows. You stop running in circles. You stand still, and I am able to step toward you. My child, I know you learned to be strong very early. You were praised for enduring well. You were acknowledged for not complaining. You were loved when you could carry much. And slowly, you came to believe that strength was the condition for belonging. But I tell you, this strength is not the entrance. Honesty is the entrance. Strength may help you survive out there. But honesty is what allows you to live in me. I do not build my house on strain. I build it on truth. And truth does not need to be beautiful. It only needs to be real. You may ask, if I tell the truth, what will I receive? You will receive this. You will be allowed to remain. To remain not because you are worthy, but because I choose to stay. You will breathe more deeply. You will stop performing. You will be allowed not to know everything. You will be allowed not to be okay and still be loved. And from that place, I will begin to do what your own strength cannot do. I will stitch together what is torn, warm what has grown cold, and lead you forward without requiring you to wear a mask. My beloved child, the first door opened the moment you spoke the truth, even if only within your heart. I do not need you to speak loudly. I do not need you to speak well. I only need you to speak truly. And when you do, you will discover something wondrous. I am not standing at the end of the road, waiting for you to become good enough to arrive. I am standing right at this threshold, waiting for you to lay down the garment of pretense. Step in not through shame, but through honesty, my beloved. Now I will teach you something very practical, so that you stop thinking faith must always be a great emotion that erupts like fire to be called faith. In many seasons, faith is not a shout of joy. Faith is a small but right action. It does not need noise to have power. It does not need drama to carry weight. Faith is sometimes nothing more than a very simple choice to remain. And I want you to understand remaining correctly, because you have grown used to hearing that word as if it meant stillness, as if I were asking you to sit passively, endure, and wait for something to happen beyond your reach. No, my child, remaining is not stagnation. Remaining is reorienting your direction, turning your face toward the right place, stopping the flight from yourself, ending the habit of skimming past the truth. You have lived too long in the rhythm of running from emotions, from memories, from questions, from fear, from emptiness. You run not because you enjoy it, but because you learned that if you stopped, you would be overwhelmed. But my child, stopping in me is not the same as stopping in loneliness. To stop in me is to stop within an embrace. And that embrace does not suffocate you, it allows you to breathe. So remaining is the decision to say, Lord, I will not run anymore. You do not need to say it aloud. You only need to say it within your heart, but say it truthfully. When you do, you have just cut an invisible cord that has been pulling you away from the center for far too long. Remaining begins with an exhale. You have grown used to inhaling without fully exhaling, breathing in responsibility, expectations, urgency, fear, then holding it all in your chest as if exhaling would mean losing control. But my child, you cannot be healed while holding your breath. Exhale. Exhale what you have been gripping. Exhale defensiveness. Exhale the sentence, I must be okay. Exhale the tension you call resilience. And when you exhale, you are telling heaven, I allow peace to enter. I do not need long explanations. I need you to open the door with your breath, because breath is the simplest rhythm I placed within you, as a reminder to live is to receive and to give. You have been holding on for too long. Give it back to me. After the exhale, remaining becomes a short prayer, so short that you cannot use it to perform, nor to hide. You do not need beautiful words. You only need one true sentence. It may be as simple as, Lord, I am here, or please hold me, or please lead me, or I do not know what to do. My child, sometimes a short prayer is stronger than a long speech, because it travels straight from the most honest place. It is not constructed to impress. It is spoken in order to live. And I respond to such prayers not with spectacle, but by placing a warm silence upon your heart, a silence that says, I hear you. Remaining is also the decision to stop running at the very moment you want to run most. Pay attention when truth begins to touch you. Your reflex is often to withdraw. You reach for your phone to scroll. You turn something on to fill the space. You find something to do so you do not have to feel. You think you are killing time. But in truth, you are killing awareness. And I do not condemn you for having that reflex. I only want you to recognize it. For when you recognize it, you gain the freedom to choose differently. You can say, no, this time I will not scroll. I will remain 1 more minute. My child, that 1 minute can change your entire day. Because in the minute you do not run, I have room to touch the place you have avoided for far too long. You once thought that to come near to me, you had to do something great that you had to change completely. Clean away every fault. Fix yourself until you were worthy. But, my child, I speak to you with the simple truth of Scripture. James 4:8 says, draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. Do you see? It does not say, be perfect and then come. It does not say, be strong and then come. It does not say, understand everything and then come. It simply says, draw near. And often, drawing near is nothing more than a very small step, a quiet exhale, a short prayer, a decision not to run. You come near with what you have, right where you are standing. And I come near to you without delay. I do not use distance to punish. I use distance to invite. And when you take 1 step toward me, I step toward you with my whole heart. My child, let me teach you how to remain in a way that is concrete and livable. Not just a beautiful concept you hear about. To remain is sometimes to turn down the volume on unnecessary noise, not to escape life, but to hear your own heart again. To remain is to place your hand on your chest and say, Lord, I am here. Please do not let me wander. To remain is to write 1 honest sentence instead of spinning in circles in your thoughts. To remain is to choose to call a healthy person instead of returning to an old habit. To remain is to stop condemning yourself and replace it with a simple truth I am learning. To remain is to refuse to let shame push you out of the light. To remain is to accept that you do not see everything yet, and still choose the right direction. My child, these things may look small, but they are foundation stones. You build a new life not with 1 dramatic leap, but with small steps repeated in the right direction. Do not despise those small steps, for the enemy rarely defeats you with 1 great blow. He defeats you by persuading you to give up on small things. He whispers, it's not worth it. It won't change anything. 1 minute makes no difference. But, my child, 1 minute of remaining can prevent an hour from falling into a pit. 1 short prayer can interrupt a chain of self-destructive thoughts. 1 timely exhale can loosen the knot in your chest. 1 decision not to scroll can open a window I have been waiting to open. And when these small things accumulate, you will look back and realize this: you are no longer merely surviving. You are being rebuilt. My beloved child, remaining does not trap you. Remaining orients you. It brings you back to the center, so that from that center, you can step forward with new clarity. You do not need to run to prove that you are strong. You only need to remain to remember that you are loved. And when you remember that, you will see this: you can keep going without panic. You can face what comes without breaking. You can wait without slowly dying inside. For drawing near is not an exam, it is a path. And on that path, every small step you take is counted by heaven as faith. My beloved child, now I want to speak to you about something deeper than all forms covenant. You have heard that word many times, and at times you have thought of covenant as a ritual to be performed correctly, a list of conditions to be kept precisely, a cold boundary between what is allowed and what is forbidden. But I tell you this, the covenant I want to rebuild within you is not a mold to force you into, nor a measuring stick to assess you day after day until you are exhausted. My covenant is a living bond, a belonging that is not cut off on your weak days, a presence that does not disappear when you are not yet whole. And today, I do not call you into covenant through rigid rituals. I call you through something very simple and very real: consent. My child, I do not coerce the heart. I do not break into rooms you have locked like an intruder. I stand at the door and knock, patiently, because love does not break doors down. Yet because I love you, I will not abandon you inside the dark room you call safe. I will stay there, calling you, waiting for you, reminding you that the door can be opened not by your strength, but by one very small decision I allow. You allow me to touch the place you avoid most. You allow me to enter the part you have hidden the longest. You allow me to see what you are most afraid of being seen. That is the new covenant of the inner life, not that you make loud promises only to break them in exhaustion, but that you give deep consent so that I may do the work of healing. What is it that you avoid the most, my child? Perhaps it is a memory you skim past quickly, afraid that if you touch it, it will shatter. Perhaps it is a pain you buried beneath busyness. Perhaps it is a story you do not want to tell because you fear being judged. Perhaps it is the feeling you hate the most, the sense of not being enough, of being left behind, of being wrong even after you have tried. Perhaps it is anger you suppress, sadness you hide, envy you do not dare confess, exhaustion you refuse to name. My child, I do not come to shame those parts of you. I come to heal them. But I do not heal by painting over the surface. I heal by touching the root. And the root is always found in the place you avoid. The consent I speak of is not a phrase on the lips meant to calm you for a few minutes. It is an inward movement, where you stop keeping me at the margins and stop keeping yourself out of the light. You can speak to me very simply, Lord. I don't know where to begin, but I allow you, my child. I do not need you to explain everything clearly at once. I am the one who sees through all things. I only need you to open a narrow crack. When you open a crack, light enters. And light does not intrude. Light simply reveals what is already there. You may fear the light because it exposes, but I tell you the light exposes in order to heal, not to condemn. This new covenant is not written with your perfection. It is written with your honesty. There will be days when you are strong, and days when you are weak. There will be days when you are full of hope, and days when you doubt. There will be days when you walk swiftly, and days when you can only drag yourself one step at a time. But the covenant does not break because you are inconsistent. The covenant breaks when you withdraw your consent, when you close your heart, when you turn away, when you decide you will handle everything on your own without me. For when you handle things alone, you return to the old path, straining, hiding, escaping. But when you consent, even in weakness, I still have a way in. And, my child, I do my work not according to your strength, but according to the door you open. Understand this, I rebuild the covenant within you first by restoring your trust that I am safe. For deep down, you avoid not only because you are in pain, you avoid because you fear that if you open yourself, you will be humiliated. You fear being blamed. You fear being forced to change under pressure. You fear being looked down upon. You fear being abandoned. You have experienced these things from people, and so you carry those fears into your relationship with me. But, my child, I am not like people. I do not love you according to moods. I do not treat you with unpredictability. I do not require you to strain to prove yourself. I do not call you near only to push you away. I call you near in order to keep you there. Therefore, when I touch the place you avoid the most, I do not touch as one who picks at wounds, but as a skilled physician. I do not tear you open to make you bleed more. I open in order to cleanse, to suture, to restore. You may feel a wave of sorrow rise not because I make you sad, but because you have finally stopped suppressing it. You may feel old anger surface not to destroy, but so you may understand what was violated. You may feel trembling not because you are about to break, but because you are being unlocked from a frozen state. My child, these movements are signs of life returning. A heart that can still tremble is a heart not dead. A soul that can still weep is a soul still tender. And I need that tenderness to heal deeply. This new covenant of the inner life is also a consent to stop doing one thing. From now on, stop using shame to drive yourself. Shame says, you are bad. I say, you are wounded. Shame says, you are rejected. I say, you are being called home. Shame says, you must pay. I say, I've already paid. Now receive. When you return, I do not rehearse your sins to diminish you. I do not drag out the past like a hammer to strike your forehead. I do not keep records to use against you when you are weak. I heal in order to raise you. I name what is wrong not to label you, but to free you from it. I remind you not to trap you, but to show you how you were led out from that place. My beloved child, there is a promise I want to seal upon this passage, like a closing cadence for you to carry as you move into the next parts when you return. I do not make you smaller, I make you right again. I do not pull you down to teach you how low you are, I lift you up to remind you where you belong. I do not use truth to wound you, I use truth to set you free. And each time you consent, even with a single exhale, a quiet please, a minute when you do not run, I am rebuilding you from the foundation. Quietly yet surely. From here on, you will no longer have to live with the sense that you must manage everything alone. You will begin to learn a new rhythm, the rhythm of one who is accompanied. You will learn to walk without panic, to stop without fear, to wait without slowly dying, to open your heart without losing yourself. You will see that what I am doing is not a momentary miracle, but a rooted process of restoration. And when you look back, you will understand this. The true covenant is not that you never wandered. The true covenant is that each time you realize you have wandered, you know the way home, and you know that I am still there, my beloved child. For you to walk steadily on this journey, I need to teach you something essential, the discernment of voices. You do not lose your way merely because you are weak, many times. You lose your way because you have listened to the wrong voice. Not every sound that rises within you comes from me. Not every inner urge is guidance. And not every familiar thought speaks the truth. You live amid many voices at once interwoven, overlapping, sometimes so similar that you mistake them for one. But my child, when you do not discern, you will react to the loudest voice, not the truest one. That is why I set Michael to stand as a sword of discernment, not to frighten you, but to cut through the tangle that is wearing you down. First, I will tell you about my voice. My voice is not always loud. It does not need to be urgent. It does not push you to run. My voice carries a clear sign. It leads you toward life. When you hear it, you may still have to face hard truths, still have to change, still have to step out of what is familiar, but within you there is a strange and steady peace, not the peace of avoidance, but the peace of knowing you are in the right place. My voice does not make you hate yourself. It does not cause you to shrink. It does not make you feel like a burden. On the contrary, even when it corrects you, it preserves the sense that you are loved. My voice speaks plainly, but not harshly. It points out what must change, but it does not erase your identity. It always leaves room for hope. And, my child, my voice often comes as an invitation rather than a command. Come closer. Remain. Trust me a little more. Next, I will tell you about the voice of fear. This voice is very familiar because it has been with you for a long time. It often disguises itself as reality. Caution, wisdom, or don't be unrealistic. The voice of fear does not always speak something entirely false. It speaks part of the truth and then magnifies the rest. It reminds you of risks, but forgets to remind you of the support beneath you. It recalls old failures, but not how you survived them. When you listen to the voice of fear, you begin to contract. You shrink your dreams, shrink your trust, shrink yourself. You delay not because you are unprepared, but because you are afraid. You call it waiting for the right time, but in truth you are avoiding. The voice of fear urges you to stay safe by not stepping forward. It does not make you hate me. It makes you doubt me. It whispers, if you step out, what if? And its clearest sign is this: you feel restless, yet you have no peace. Finally, I will tell you about the voice of the enemy, the most dangerous voice, because it distorts the truth. This voice does not only make you afraid, it makes you despise yourself. It uses heavy, absolute words, always, never. This is just who you are. You'll never change. It takes your real mistakes and stamps them with a permanent label. It does not correct, it condemns. It does not lead you back, it pushes you farther away through shame. The enemy's voice often feels familiar because it speaks in your own tone, the voice of self-accusation you learned over the years. When you listen to this voice, you do not only lose peace, you lose hope. You feel smaller, worse, more useless. You want to hide, to numb yourself, to close off. My child, any voice that convinces you there is no way back, for you never comes from me. Michael stands between these three voices like a sharp sword, not to strike you, but to cut through confusion. He needs few words. He looks at the fruit each voice produces within you. And here is the question I want you to learn to ask every day, so you can discern for yourself: where does this voice lead me? Does it lead you toward life or toward contraction? Does it give you peace that still carries courage? Or does it leave you restless and self-loathing? Does it draw you closer to me and to truth? Or does it make you want to hide, cover yourself, and shrink back, my child? My voice may cause you to tremble before the truth, but it never makes you disgusted with yourself. The enemy's voice may sound reasonable, but it always leaves behind the bitter aftertaste of shame. Remember, this urgency is not guidance. When a voice makes you feel, you must act now or you will lose everything, pause. My voice does not manipulate you through panic. My voice is strong enough to wait for you. It does not need to push. It does not need to threaten. It trusts the relationship to be deep enough for you to follow in freedom. By contrast, the enemy's voice is always in a hurry. It wants you to react. It does not want you to discern. It knows that if you stop, the light will expose its deception. My beloved child, discernment is not an ability reserved for a few special people. It is a skill I desire to teach all my children. And this skill does not begin with hearing a louder voice, but with becoming quieter within. In stillness, my voice grows clearer. In stillness, fear reveals itself. In stillness, lies have nowhere left to hide. Do not be afraid when you realize you have misheard in the past. I do not use that to accuse you. I use it to train you. Each time you discern correctly, even in the smallest situation, you are sharpening the inner sword within you. I do not expect you to never hear other voices. I desire that you are no longer led by them. I want you to know how to pause and ask, where does this voice come from? Where is it leading me? And when you ask in this way, Michael stands beside you, holding space for truth to surface. As for me, I am very near, ready to confirm your choice with peace when you choose rightly. You will begin to notice something wondrous. My voice does not cause you to lose yourself. It brings you back to yourself, the version that is loved, guided, and truly alive. My beloved child, now I want you to learn to recognize subtle traps that do not arrive as obvious darkness, but disguised as partial light. Not everything that glitters comes from heaven. Not every statement that sounds right leads to life. And not every impulse, labeled spiritual, is trustworthy. The enemy rarely appears with a frightening face. More often it wears the appearance of reason, encouragement, even seeming righteousness. That is why discernment cannot stop at first impressions. Discernment must go all the way to the fruit, to the outcome that a voice produces in you after you have listened. Remember this carefully: true light does not need to deceive you through haste. True light is patient enough to wait for your maturity. False light does the opposite. It rushes you, pushes you, convinces you that if you do not act immediately, you will lose everything. It knows that haste is the enemy of truth. Therefore, the first subtle trap is pressure disguised as opportunity. It says, this is now or never. If you don't take it, someone else will. Heaven is opening a door you must run. My child, pause and ask, does this voice give you peace to step forward? Or does it only give you adrenaline to charge ahead? What comes from me may require courage, but it never steals your peace. It does not need you to panic in order to obey. The second subtle trap is the half-truth. A half-truth is more dangerous than a full lie, because it uses what is right to conceal what is wrong. It reminds you that you have potential that is true, but then it adds that you only have value if you prove yourself that is false. It says you need discipline that is true, but it also says you must punish yourself when you are weak that is false. It says you need to mature that is true, but it calls numbness maturity that is false. My child, whenever you hear a voice that sounds right yet draws you farther from me, be cautious. True light does not pull you out of relationship. It leads you deeper into relationship. The third subtle trap is the moralizing of harshness. It dresses itself in the language of high standards, iron, discipline, and strong faith. Yet inside it is cruelty toward yourself. It convinces you that if you are not severe with yourself, you will decline. If you do not force yourself, you will become lazy. If you do not push harder, you will lose. My child, I am not opposed to discipline. I am opposed to discipline without love. Discipline that comes from me makes you freer. False discipline constricts you. It causes you to measure yourself daily by spiritual performance. Then despise yourself when you fall short. Look at the fruit after hearing this voice. Do you love truth more? Or do you merely fear being wrong more? If you fear being wrong so much that you are afraid to be real, that is not my voice. The fourth subtle trap is equating strong emotion with guidance. There are times when emotions surge, excitement, inspiration, deep stirring, and you assume these are certain signs from heaven. But, my child, I do not reject emotion. I simply do not hand emotion the keys to direction. Emotions come and go. Guidance remains. True light may accompany emotion, but it does not depend on emotion to be true. If, after the emotional high fades, you find yourself empty, confused, or self-condemning for not keeping the fire. Pause. Ask yourself, did this voice leave a solid foundation? Or was it only a wave I build your life on? Rock, not on waves. The fifth subtle trap is comparison that has been sanctified. It tells you that you should look at others to learn that is true. But then it whispers that you are behind, that you are late, that you are not enough. That is false. It turns a mirror into a whip. My child, true light does not require you to become smaller so that others may appear greater. True light places each person in their proper rhythm. When you hear a voice that draws you away from yourself, away from your breath, your identity, your peace, question it. My voice always leads you home within yourself first, and from that place opens you outward to others. Michael stands among those traps like the blade of a simple standard. He does not argue at length. He asks only this: what is the fruit after you have listened? Are you closer to me or farther from me? Do you love truth more? Or do you despise yourself more? Are you braver? Or more panicked? More free? Or more bound by pressure, my child? Fruit does not lie. A good tree does not bear poisonous fruit. And a voice from heaven does not produce shame. It produces healthy repentance, a turning back filled with hope, not self-punishment. Be cautious of the trap of spiritual language when the fruit of life is shallow. There are words that are linguistically correct, theologically smooth, even impressive, but when you live by them, you grow exhausted, closed off, distant from people, distant from me. Correct wording is not enough. I look for right direction. Right direction is where you are built up to love more, to live more truthfully, to become more alive. If a voice asks you to trade love for performance, peace for speed, truth for image, stop. True light never requires you to exchange your soul to reach a goal. My beloved child, I do not teach you discernment so that you doubt everything and fear each step. I teach you discernment so that you can walk without breaking. I do not want you to close your heart. I want you to open it in the right places. I do not want you to slow down because of fear. I want you to be steady because you are grounded in truth. When you use the standard of fruit, many voices will simply fall away. You do not need to fight them. They reveal themselves when light shines on what they produce within you. Remember, this true light does not isolate you. It draws you into healthy community. It gives you the courage to seek help. It makes you humble enough to learn, not proud enough to exalt yourself. False light separates you, it whispers. Only you understand. Only you are deep enough. Others cannot keep up. My child, any voice that feeds isolation and self-exaltation does not come from me. I build my kingdom with hearts that are connected in truth. So when you stand before a choice, do not ask only, does this seem good? Ask instead, does this draw me closer to you? Does it help me love people more? Does it make me more honest? Does it give me enough peace to walk forward with courage? Michael stands there to guard the space where these questions can be heard. And I am there to answer with peace that is not artificial peace, that walks hand in hand with light. My beloved child, I want you to relearn the authority of silence in a deeper, slower, truer way. You have lived too long in a world that believes whatever speaks louder must be truer. Whatever moves faster must be stronger. Whatever feels more urgent must be more important. But, my child, truth does not need to shout in order to exist. Truth carries weight, and that weight does not fall on the ears first. It settles into the soul. You have heard words that were logical, persuasive, perfectly reasoned. Yet after hearing them, you felt emptier, heavier, more tangled inside. And then there are words that are simple, even incomplete in explanation. But when you stay with them in stillness, you find yourself standing firm again. as though an anchor has been placed within you. That is the difference between a voice with volume and a voice with authority. And authority reveals itself only when you slow down long enough for truth to disclose itself. You have grown accustomed to discerning through intellect, through comparison, argument, analysis, the effort to understand it all. But, my child, there are things you were never created to carry with your mind alone. Your reasoning is precious, but it is not a throne. When you place reason on the throne, you grow weary, because it must shoulder what exceeds its capacity. I place deep discernment within silence, because silence does not argue, does not rush, does not need to prove itself. In silence, lies have nowhere to cling, because lies require constant motion to survive. They need your reaction, your fear, your haste, your decision before your heart has time to breathe. Truth does not need those things. Truth is patient enough to wait until you are calm again. And so, whenever you encounter a voice that presses you to choose immediately, to act immediately, to prove yourself immediately, remember, this urgency is a sign of missing authority. What comes from me never needs your panic in order to receive your obedience. Michael stands beside you not to create noise, but to guard that quiet space from intrusion. He does not strike with force, he strikes by stopping at the right moment. When you learn to stop, you allow the discerning blade to cut through the tangled threads within you without wounding you. I want you to practice a habit that is very simple, yet very deep. When a thought, an invitation, or a decision appears, do not react immediately. Stop. Let your breathing slow. Notice what is happening within you without judgment, whether your chest opens or tightens, whether your inner world feels bright or dim, whether you sense an invitation to rise or a pressure to run. Then whisper a very short sentence, not to impress anyone, but to put everything back into proper order. Lord, please give light. And after that, wait. My child, you will be surprised to find that truth does not disappear while you wait. Only false urgency cannot endure silence. I know you fear that if you stop, you will miss your opportunity. But, my child, what is truly meant for you does not pass by simply because you did not chase after it. Anything that requires you to trade away your peace in order to keep it was never born to belong to you. I do not protect you by giving you every door. I protect you by keeping you from doors that would break you before you are strong enough to pass through them. And it is precisely in silence that your motives are exposed. When there is no applause, no gaze, no pressure, you begin to see why you want something, whether out of love or fear, obedience or the need for recognition, life or the obsession to prove that you matter. My child, I do not condemn mixed motives. I simply want you to see them, because when you see, you regain the power to choose again, and choices born in silence are often the ones that do not betray the soul. You need to know that silence is not emptiness. Silence is the environment of guidance, just as a seed does not sprout amid noise. Deep discernment does not occur in turmoil. In silence, I do not always give you a detailed map, I give you a direction. You may not yet know the entire path, but you know where to turn your face. And as you walk in that direction, the next steps will open at the right time. My voice carries a distinct weight. It does not crush you, but it anchors you. After you sit with it, you may still have questions, but you are not panicked. You may still need courage, but you are not alone. You are not driven into shame. You are placed into light. By contrast, voices that do not come from me, no matter how reasonable they sound, leave behind a residue of tension, haste, self-blame, comparison, or the urge to prove yourself. My child, Residue does not lie. The fruit of a voice will tell you where it comes from. The authority of silence also teaches you the right timing for action. I do not call you to remain stopped forever. I call you to stop so you can move in rhythm. At times I will urge you to move quickly. Yet even then, you will be at peace. At times I will ask you to wait. Yet even while waiting, you will still be alive, open, and growing within. Silence does not make you slow, it makes you right. And right matters more than fast. One right step can save you from years of repair. Michael guards that silence from being disrupted by intrusive voices. And I use silence to place authority within you, so that you no longer have to run after every opinion when you stand before a choice. I do not want you dependent on external voices. I want you to learn to listen from where I have placed my law within your heart. My beloved child, as you begin to honor silence, you will see your life change clearly, less dramatic, yet steadier, less chaotic, yet deeper, less reactive, yet wiser. You do not need to cut off every voice. You only need to know which voice carries authority, and that authority does not announce itself. It is recognized in silence. Therefore, as you move forward, do not rush first to find answers. Seek wait. Do not only ask, "What is this voice saying?" Ask instead, "Who is this voice shaping me to become?" If it draws you closer to me, closer to truth, closer to love, trust it. If it pulls you away from those things, stop. You do not need to argue with it. You only need to be still. And in that stillness, I will lead you. Asterisk, asterisk, my beloved child. Now I want to touch the deepest fracture of identity, asterisk, asterisk, the place where, for many years, you have carried a quiet sentence you can no longer remember learning from anywhere. I tried, and it still didn't work. That sentence does not thunder like a loud accusation. It whispers softly, yet it seeps into every decision you make. It makes you walk more slowly, even when you long to go far. It makes you cautious, even when opportunity opens. It exhausts you before you begin. And worst of all, it convinces you that something fundamental in you is lacking favor, lacking blessing, lacking ability, lacking being chosen by heaven. My child, I do not deny that you tried. I know every effort you made, every time you stood up after failure, every night you wondered why you were not like others. But I come to separate effort from identity, so that you no longer use outcomes as the measure of your worth. That fracture often forms when you have done many things right, yet the results did not arrive as you hoped. You prayed. You were patient. You corrected yourself. You waited, and still it was delayed. You looked around and saw others receive things faster, more easily, and slowly. A dangerous assumption took root within you. Perhaps heaven did not choose me. My child, this is where the lie takes hold, not because you lack faith, but because you endured for too long without explanation. When there is no explanation, the mind writes its own story, and that story often turns its blade inward. You do not speak it aloud, but you live by it. You lower your expectations, shrink your dreams, choose safety over truth, and avoid steps that might bring you into the light for fear of yet another. It didn't work. You call this humility. In truth, it is a wound steering the wheel. I want you to hear this clearly. I tried, and it still didn't work, is not your definition. It describes a season, not your name. When you bind your identity to a hard season, you turn a process into a verdict. I never call you by temporary outcomes. I call you by eternal purpose, and that purpose is not canceled by delays. Many times, delay itself is how I protect you from receiving too early what would break you. I know you are weary of hearing this. because you have heard many consolations without seeing change. But, my child, what I am doing here is not emotional comfort. I am healing the root. Look more deeply into the feeling of not being chosen. It does not only make you sad, it bends the way you see yourself and heaven. You begin to live like someone who must prove themselves instead of someone who is loved. You do more to compensate. You endure longer to feel worthy. You stay silent more so as not to be a burden. You try to be more right so you will be kept. And in that process, you lose something very precious, the naturalness of relationship. You no longer come to me as a child comes to a father. You come like a job applicant, afraid of rejection. My child, that is not the covenant I established. I did not choose you because you were perfect. I chose you to make you whole. There is a verse of scripture I want to place gently right here. Like a needle mending what has been torn, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for peace and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 2:9-1-1. My child, I did not write this to people who have never stumbled. I wrote it to those who were in exile, those who tried and still did not see. My plan is not erased by a difficult present. Your future and your hope are not canceled by slow progress. When I say plans for peace, I am not saying the road will have no wind. I am saying the destination will not betray your soul. The deepest cracks often carry another fear. If I take one more step and it still doesn't work, I won't survive it. So you learn to stand still, not because you believe in stillness, but because you fear more pain. My child, I do not see that fear as weakness. I see it as evidence that you have truly been hurt. But I do not want fear to become your guide. I want to heal it with truth. You no longer have to endure alone. When you step, I step with you. When you wait, I am with you. When you fall, I do not turn away. My presence does not depend on your performance. It rests on unchanging love. I also want you to see that many times when you think you were not given something, I was actually adjusting the timing to protect your identity. If you had received too early what you asked for, while your heart still tied its value to outcomes, you would have been swallowed by the pressure to keep them. I am slow not to tease you. I am slow so you will not be exchanged, and exchanged between grace and identity, between blessing and self-worth. I want that when the blessing comes, you do not use it to prove your value, but to serve in freedom. My child, healing, this root, does not happen through a single emotional decision. It happens when you agree to change the story you tell about yourself. Instead of "I tried and still didn't get it," learn to say, "I tried in one season, and you are working in things I cannot yet see." Instead of "I was not chosen," say, "I am being prepared." Instead of "I am late," say, "I am being timed." This is not self-hypnosis. This is resetting truth according to what I know, not according to what you fear. When you change the story, you change the way you walk. When you change the way you walk, you make room for me to do something new without breaking you. I do not deny the tears you have shed. I do not minimize the years you have waited. But I say this with the authority of love. I do not use your pain to disqualify you. I use it to deepen you. And those who are deepened are not carried away by passing winds. They stand firm when seasons change. They do not need to prove themselves. They radiate. They do not compete. They attract. They do not fear being left behind. They know they belong. That is the person I am rebuilding within you, my beloved child. When you return to this truth, I do not remind you of guilt to lower you. I heal you to lift you. I do not use the past to bind you. I use it to teach you to walk with wisdom. I do not ask how far you have slipped. I ask whether you are willing to walk with me from here. And when you nod, even very softly, I reset your identity on solid rock. you are chosen, not because you are fast, but because you are faithful, not because you never stumble, but because you do not abandon me. From that rock, I will lead you forward steady, real, and free, my beloved child. Now I want you to learn a very important distinction, a thin line, yet one that determines your freedom, sin, grace, and worthiness. For many years, you have lived between two extremes. On one side is the fear of loosening responsibility, the fear that if you speak too much about grace, you will treat what is right lightly. On the other side is the habit of self-punishment, the belief that if you do not hurt yourself enough, you will not change. Neither is my way. My grace does not deny responsibility, but it also does not empower shame. Responsibility flows from love, self-punishment flows from fear. And I am calling you out of fear and into a love that has the power to renew. Listen very slowly to this. Responsibility is taking ownership of your share in the truth. Self-punishment is attacking your identity with a distorted version of the truth. When you make a mistake, responsibility says, "This needs to be corrected." Self-punishment says, "You are what needs to be corrected." These two sentences look similar, but they lead to very different places. Responsibility opens the way for a process. Self-punishment shuts the door with shame. Responsibility invites you to return. Self-punishment drives you to hide or to freeze. I'm not calling you to live without responsibility. I am calling you to live healed, so that you can carry responsibility without being crushed. My child, you have grown accustomed to the cycle of self-penalty because you believe it keeps you upright. You blame yourself, diminish yourself, repeat your failures to yourself so that you will remember and not repeat them. But look at the fruit of that cycle. It does not make you love the truth more. It makes you afraid of the truth. It does not draw you closer to me. It makes you avoid me. It does not produce new life. It produces chronic exhaustion. My grace does not make you forget what was wrong. My grace gives you the strength to repair what was wrong without losing yourself. That strength is what you need, not the whip. I anchor you here with a scripture that is simple, yet liberating. Romans 8:1 says, "Therefore, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." My child, no condemnation does not mean no standards. It means you are not condemned when you are in me. Condemnation strikes at identity. Correction addresses direction. I correct you as a father corrects a child so that you may live, not so that you may collapse. If a voice makes you believe that you are excluded from love when you stumble, that voice does not come from me. I do not use the fear of abandonment to teach you obedience. I use the safety of being loved to help you mature. You may ask, then where does responsibility belong? Responsibility belongs in truth that is not avoided. You name what was wrong accurately. You acknowledge its impact on others and on yourself. You choose to repair, not to buy back your worth, but to restore order. Responsibility is standing upright in the light and saying, "This does not reflect who I am called to become." Then you take the necessary steps, apologizing, making restitution, breaking a habit, seeking support, resetting boundaries. All of these are actions of one who is loved, not of one who is condemned. You do not repair in order to be loved. You repair because you are loved. My child, grace is not a blanket to cover avoidance. Grace is the power that enables you to remain with the truth longer than you ever could before. It keeps you from running when shame rises. It gives you courage to face consequences without breaking. It gives you patience to walk step by step through renewal, a process that rarely happens overnight. I do not need you to make loud promises. I need you to practice faithfully. One right step each day is stronger than a vow made in a surge of emotion. The cycle of self-punishment often disguises itself as humility. You say, "I'm terrible. I'm unworthy. I'm nothing." You think that this is lowering yourself. But, my child, that is not humility, it is disbelief in me. True humility says, I have failed, and I need grace. It does not say, I am the failure. True humility holds truth and hope in the same breath. It allows you to repent and to believe at the same time. The cycle of self-punishment tears those two apart, keeping you either in repentance with no exit or in hope with no roots. I am calling you to live in both. Let me show you how to step out of that cycle through very concrete movements. When you stumble, do not rush immediately into self-blame. Pause. Name what was wrong accurately without attaching labels to who you are. Bring it to me in a short, honest prayer. Receive grace, not as a feeling, but as a fact. Then ask one single question. What is the next repairing step? Not 10 steps. One step. It may be a phone call to apologize. It may be a small change in a habit. It may be finding a companion to walk with you. Then take that step in peace, not in panic. As you repeat this process, you are forging a new way of living, the way of one who takes responsibility without self-destruction. My child, the process of renewal does not take place when you hate yourself enough. It unfolds when you love the truth deeply enough. Grace makes the truth bearable. It does not soften the truth. It makes you strong enough to remain with the truth until the truth has finished its work. And that work is not labeling, it is recreation. I do not repair the surface, I rebuild the foundation. I do not prune to cause you pain, I prune so that you may bear fruit. You will recognize that you are stepping out of the cycle of self-punishment when these signs begin to appear. You no longer hide from me when you are wrong, you seek me. You no longer scold yourself to remember the lesson, you learn the lesson and move forward. You no longer wait to feel worthy before you obey because you trust. You no longer use shame to drive yourself, you use hope to draw yourself onward. These are the signs that grace is operating as it should. Beloved child, I do not lower the standard so that you will feel less tired. I raise you up so that you can live by the standard without breaking. My standard is not flawless perfection. My standard is abiding in me. In me, you will be corrected when needed, lifted when weak, guided when lost, and held when you have no strength left. I do not remind you of guilt to press you down. I heal you to lift you up. And when you step out of the cycle of self-punishment into the process of renewal, you will see this responsibility is no longer a burden, but a pathway, the pathway of one led by grace, walking step by steady step in freedom. My beloved child, now I want you to enter the final movement of this section, where I close the old cycle and open a new rhythm of living. For when you have learned to distinguish sin from grace, when you have left the habit of self-torment to step into renewal, the next question is no longer, am I worthy, but rather, how will I live from this new foundation? I did not save you so that you would return to familiar spirals with more religious language. I saved you so that you would live differently, not differently by straining yourself, but differently by being led from within. There is something subtle I want you to notice. Many leave self-punishment only to fall into self-management driven by anxiety. They no longer strike themselves with shame, but they monitor every emotion, every decision, every step with the fear of being wrong. They say, I no longer punish myself, yet they still do not allow themselves to breathe. My child, this is merely a new mask of the same old root, the root of believing that everything depends on you. I am calling you further than that. I am calling you into partnership. You take responsibility and freedom, and I carry the part that only I can carry. You need to learn to live from an identity that has been healed, not to live in order to search for an identity. When you live to search, you are constantly pulled by others' reactions, by immediate outcomes. by passing signs. When you live from identity, you walk with a new stability, not because challenges disappear, but because you are no longer defined by them. I do not promise that the road will be smooth. I promise that the foundation will be firm, and a firm foundation allows you to pass through rough stretches without losing yourself. There is a verse of scripture I want to place here as a marker for this new rhythm of life. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, all things have become new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. My child, becoming new does not mean that you wake up one morning with no memories, no habits, no old reflexes. Becoming new means that the source of control has changed. Before, fear and shame were at the wheel. Now, truth and grace are. You may still recognize the old voices, but they no longer have the authority to decide. You are no longer pulled along by what once made you tremble. This new rhythm of life is built through small but faithful choices, not choices made to prove something, but choices made to preserve life. You will learn to ask different questions. Before, you asked, will this make me more accepted? Now you ask, will this keep me in the truth? Before, you asked, what will others think? Now you ask, will this draw me closer to you or farther from you? Before, you asked, am I strong enough to do this? Now you ask, how are you inviting me to walk today? These questions are not loud, but they realign the axis. My child, to live within a process of renewal also means allowing time to do its work. You have grown accustomed to measuring progress by leaps, but I measure by endurance. I look to see whether you remain when it is hard. I look to see whether you return when you have wandered. I look to see whether you speak truth when shame rises. I look to see whether you keep walking, even slowly. These things do not make headlines, yet they build a life that does not collapse easily. You do not need to do something great to prove that you have been renewed. You only need not to return to the old ways when you are triggered. There will be days when you stumble, not because you have not been renewed, but because renewal is a process. What is different now is how you rise. You no longer lie there to punish yourself. You do not flee the light. You rise by truth, return by grace, and move forward by one small but right action. My child, each time you rise in this way, you are reinforcing a new pathway in your mind, in your heart, in your soul. You are learning a new reflex, the reflex of one who is loved. I also want you to know that living in this new rhythm does not mean you no longer need others. On the contrary, true grace opens you to healthy community. You will learn to seek support not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. You will learn to receive feedback without collapsing. You will learn to ask for help without seeing yourself as lesser. That is the sign of a healed identity. You do not need isolation to feel safe. You know you are safe enough to open. My child, there is one final thing I want you to engrave in this section. I do not measure you by the speed of your recovery, but by your faithfulness to the truth. Some recover quickly on the surface but lack depth at the root. Others recover slowly, but deeply. I value the deep. I build the durable. And what is durable allows you to go farther than you ever thought possible. When you accept the process, you stop competing with other people's stories. You stop comparing your road with theirs. You stop asking, why am I not there yet? And begin asking, what am I being taught here, my child? I know there is a very deep axis within you that has been misaligned for a long time, the axis by which you see yourself. It was not misaligned because you were weak, but because you had to carry too many perspectives that were not yours, the gaze of disappointed people, the judgments of seasons of failure, the hurried conclusions written while you were in pain. When that axis is off, everything you see becomes distorted. Success is never enough to give you peace. and a small mistake is enough to make you condemn yourself. But today I have not come to fix individual behaviors. I have come to rebuild the axis. I say this clearly and slowly so you can truly hear it. You are not the product of failure. You are one being reshaped, not discarded, but placed in the hands of the potter where the clay softens so a new form can be made. If you keep seeing yourself through old fragments, you will think you are only the sum of what is broken. But if you allow me to realign the axis, you will begin to see yourself as I see you, a work in process, not yet finished, but moving in the right direction. I know you have asked yourself, if I have been healed, why am I still tired if I am recovering? Why am I still slow, my beloved? True restoration is not loud. It does not arrive with shouts of victory. It comes with small but honest signs. And this is what you need to learn, to recognize. A miracle is not only what overwhelms you. A miracle is also what loosens your grip. A night when you sleep more peacefully without wrestling your thoughts. A morning when you breathe deeply and your chest no longer feels like stone. A moment when you react more slowly to what once made you explode. These are not accidents. They are traces of restoration. You have been trained to look for signs in big events, so you overlook the small things that are telling the truth about me. But I am teaching you to read yourself in a different language, the language of softening. When your soul no longer has to strain to survive, it begins to have space to live. And real living always begins with very small rhythms. Realigning the way you see yourself also means you stop identifying yourself with seasons you did not understand. You once said, I am someone who often fails. I am someone who is always slow. I am someone who ruins things. These statements sound humble, but in truth, they are sentences you have pronounced over your own identity. I do not call you by what you went through in a difficult season. I call you by what I am doing within you, and I am reshaping layer by layer, fold by fold, reflex by reflex. There are habits I do not tear out immediately, not because I tolerate them, but because I am softening the roots. If I pull while the soil is still hard, you would break with it. So I water, I wait, I touch at the right moment. Trust me in this process. As it is written, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ. You are not an abandoned project. You are a work being carefully tended. When the axis shifts, you will find yourself responding differently to your own imperfections. Instead of scolding yourself, you know how to pause. Instead of denying, you know how to name what is happening. Instead of hiding, you know how to ask for help. These changes do not make you weak, they make you real. And truth is always the foundation of freedom. You will notice your heart becoming softer, not soft so that it can be heard again, but soft so that it can feel again. Some have long equated softness with danger, because they only learned to be hard in order to survive. But I am teaching you something new. Softness in me is safe. When you are soft, you hear more clearly. When you hear clearly, you choose more wisely, and wise choices, repeated in small things, will write a steady life, one you no longer need to prove. Shifting the axis of self-perception also means learning to reread your own history in a new light. You do not deny what happened, you simply stop letting it define you. The cracks are no longer evidence that you are broken, they are the places where I entered. You will see that the places that once filled you with shame are becoming places of genuine compassion. What once silenced you is becoming a source of words with weight. And you will be surprised to realize this: the very things you most wanted to forget are now being used by me to build bridges you never imagined you could stand on. I do not romanticize pain, I redeem it. And when you begin to see yourself through that redeemed lens, you will stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "Who am I being shaped to become now, my child?" Let me say this to close this portion within your heart. True restoration does not return you to who you were. It brings you back to what is right. Right to the breath you were created to breathe. Right to the pace you were called to walk. Right to a softness that is no longer defensive. If today you only see small miracles, treasure them, for they are the foundation of greater things. And as you continue walking on a realigned axis, you will not need to convince anyone of your change. The growing steadiness of peace within you will speak for itself. You are not the product of failure. You are being reshaped, and my hands have never left you. My child, I do not speak to you only in moments when you close your eyes to pray and then open them to return to the same old rhythm of life. I do not merely touch you in the unseen realm so that you feel moved for a moment, then leave you to struggle with tangled schedules, draining habits, and loose boundaries that exhaust you. I step into your real, daily life. I step into how you use your time, how you set limits, how you care for your body, how you speak to yourself when no one is listening, how you reorder priorities that seem small but are, in truth, steering your entire life. For your faith is not measured only by peak moments, but by the steady rhythm of ordinary days, the rhythm you choose, even when nothing miraculous seems to be happening. You once thought discipline was a set of chains. You feared that if you lived with structure, you would lose your freedom, that if you set boundaries, you would become cold, that if you kept a schedule, you would be confined. But, beloved, hear me, discipline is not chains, discipline is rails. Rails do not rob a train of freedom, they enable it to travel far without getting lost, to move fast without derailing, to endure without self-destruction. My grace is like a train carrying strength and life. But without rails, you will experience grace like a passing breeze, touching and fading, lifting and then dropping you. I do not give grace so that you live by emotion. I give grace so that you live by foundation. And that foundation is built from small habits, choosing to sleep at the right time, choosing to stop at the right moment, choosing to say no when needed, choosing not to let other people's schedules devour your soul. I know you are used to wanting change through a single leap. You want to wake up one day and have everything be new, diligent, strong, clear-minded, peaceful, as if life could simply be reset. But I work in a deeper way. I rebuild your life, brick by brick, through faithfulness. I do not only heal you from burnout, I teach you not to return to the lifestyle that created it. I do not only rescue you from relationships that entangle your mind, I teach you to set boundaries so that peace is not stolen. I do not only comfort you through restless nights, I teach you to build a daily rhythm that allows night to be at rest. This is how I turn faith into lived reality, not through abstract promises, but through concrete decisions. So today, I ask you, what is controlling your time? Are you letting your phone determine your rhythm? Are you allowing messages to pull you away from my presence at any moment? Are you letting procrastination trap you in a constant sense of guilt? Beloved, a schedule is not merely a to-do list. It is a portrait of what you worship. What occupies your best hours is often what holds authority in your heart. I do not condemn you. I simply invite you to see truthfully. And when you see truthfully, you will have the freedom to change truthfully. I enter your habits with gentleness, yet with clarity. I teach you to begin your day with an anchor, not so that you can complete a spiritual duty, but so that you can realign your center. Just a few minutes of stillness, a few deep breaths, a brief prayer. Lord, please lead me today. Do not take those moments lightly. They are like adjusting a compass before a long journey. A compass that is off by only a little can lead you astray over an entire stretch of road. But a compass recalibrated each day will keep you on course. Even as you walk through fog, I also teach you to set boundaries, not with anger, but with peace. You do not need long explanations to justify your need for rest. You do not need to apologize for needing quiet. You do not need to prove that you are exhausted in order to stop. My beloved child, boundaries are how you protect what I am building within you. When you say no to what scatters you, you are saying yes to what gives you life. When you dare to mute unnecessary noise, you turn up the volume for my voice. And my voice does not drive you into panic. My voice leads you into order. I enter the way you treat your body and your mind as well. You are not a floating soul. You live within a body. When you starve your body of sleep, nourishment, or movement, you will find yourself more irritable, more discouraged, more easily pulled into negative spirals, and then you assume that this is weak faith. But sometimes, you are simply tired. I do not shame you for that. I invite you to learn wisdom. Remember this, your body is not the enemy of your spiritual life. It is the place where stewardship is practiced. When you care for your body, you honor what I have entrusted to you. When you give your mind moments of rest, you make space for your soul to breathe. And then I teach you something essential. Discipline is not how you save yourself. Discipline is how you cooperate with grace. You do not practice discipline in order to be loved by me. You practice discipline because you are already loved. You do not establish rhythms to become worthy. You establish rhythms so that the good I have planted will not be choked by weeds. As it is written, God is not a God of disorder but of peace. And peace is not merely a feeling. Peace is an inner order, protected by wise daily choices. My child, I am rebuilding your everyday life. You will no longer live by chasing emotional sparks that flare up and die out. You will learn to walk by a steady lamp. You will see this clearly when your schedule is reordered. Your heart becomes lighter. When your boundaries are clear, your strength is preserved. When your body is cared for, the fog in your mind begins to lift. And when these things are set in their proper place, my grace is no longer something you only hear about, it becomes something you live. My child, I want you to learn a truth that will guard your heart from illusion and also keep you from bitterness. I do not sustain you with promises of riches in 24 hours. I do not pull you into brief bursts of excitement only to let you crash into deeper disappointment. I do not bless you in ways that make your soul lazy, your will weak, or your discernment blind. I bless you in ways that form maturity within you. And because I love you, I teach you principles straight, enduring paths you can walk on. Whether in seasons of ease or in seasons of adversity, I teach you faithfulness before I teach you expansion. Faithfulness is not doing grand things for applause. Faithfulness is doing your part well when no one is clapping. It is arriving on time, fulfilling commitments, answering responsibilities, keeping your word, and working with a clean heart even when you think no one notices. You once wanted me to change your life in a single leap, but I am changing your life through a foundation. A house can be built quickly, but a foundation needs time to bear weight. I say this so you will stop despising yourself every time you do one small thing rightly. You are laying another stone for your future. I teach you wisdom so that you may not only gain, but also keep. Wisdom is knowing the difference between need and impulse, between investment and display, between a true opportunity and an invitation born of lack. Wisdom is learning to keep records, to look honestly at numbers, to plan, to say not yet to certain desires so that you can say yes to a longer goal. My beloved, I am not against abundance, I am against chaos. If money comes without order, money will become a greater test than scarcity. So I teach you order. Order does not make you poor, order makes you free. I teach you integrity so that you do not trade your soul for results. There are doors that open very quickly if you are willing to bend principles, exaggerate the truth, or ignore boundaries. But listen to me, a door opened by deception will always demand more deception to keep it open. That is the trap that leads many to believe they are successful, while inwardly they are becoming hollow. I do not want you to win that way. I want you to step into blessing without fear of exposure, without fear of disgrace, without fear that one day everything will collapse. Integrity is a quiet form of wealth. You sleep in peace because you know your hands are clean. You lift your head high because you know your path is straight. As it is written, whoever walks in integrity walks securely, and that security is worth more than any number. But my beloved child, I also teach you to be courageous in receiving opportunity. Courage is not recklessness. Courage is the willingness to step forward when I have prepared you, even while your heart still trembles. There are seasons when you prayed for a door, yet when the door arrived, you stepped back, afraid that you were not enough. I do not blame you. I am calling you to grow. You will learn to prepare your resume, to strengthen your skills, to keep learning, to present yourself clearly, to connect with the right people, not to prove your worth, but to cooperate with what I am opening. Opportunity is not magic. Opportunity is often the meeting of preparation and the right moment, and I am the one who governs timing. So what is the blessing I speak of? Blessing is not merely having more money. Blessing is right placement in time, being set into the right project at the right moment, the right market at the right moment, the right role at the right moment, when what you have been accumulating finally finds room to flourish. Blessing is meeting the right people, a mentor, a partner, a client, an employer, a colleague not only capable, but aligned with your principles and your rhythm of life. Blessing is the opening of the right door. Not every door that looks large is the right door. Some doors look modest, yet lead you into a long path of peace. And when blessing comes this way, you will recognize it. This is not luck. This is a journey of maturity. There will be times when you see me close certain doors. You may think I am taking opportunity away, but often I am rescuing you from the hidden cost behind it. I do not look only at the surface. I look at consequences. I see the exhaustion it would bring, the compromises it would demand, the fractures it would leave behind. And because I love you, I choose what makes you durable. You will learn the grace of slowness, slow enough to read the contract carefully, slow enough to understand people, slow enough to weigh risk, slow enough to ask for my counsel. Those who rush often pay with their peace. Those who know how to wait for the right moment often enter stability even while they are busy. I also want you to understand responsibility in a new way. Responsibility is not a burden you carry to prove that you are worthy. Responsibility is how you grow in stewardship. When you receive responsibility, you are expanding your capacity. When your capacity increases, blessing has room to remain, and you will stop fearing money. Stop fearing opportunity. Stop fearing success because you no longer see them as what determines your value. You will see them as tools to serve the purpose I entrust to you. When you live this way, money does not control you. You govern money by principle. Work does not consume you. You use work to build a life. My child, let me seal this within you. I do not promise a financial miracle that awakens greed. I promise a path that forms you into someone who can carry blessing without being ruined by it. You will learn faithfulness, wisdom, integrity, and courage. And then you will look back and realize that your lucky moments were never random. They were my preparation, your growth, and the right timing so that you would walk through the right door, meet the right people, do the right work, and keep your peace even as your life expands. My child, I do not hide this from you. Every true turning point requires you to leave the familiar. There is no door into a new chapter that allows you to keep everything old unchanged. And at that very point, fear appears not as an enemy, but as a signal that you are standing before something beyond your accustomed control. I do not condemn that fear. I do not tell you, do not be afraid, as a denial of your feelings. I simply place fear under the light, so it does not sit in the driver's seat. For fear, when illuminated, becomes information, but when hidden, it becomes the one who controls. You have grown accustomed to control as a way to feel safe. You calculate. You prepare backups. You keep familiar exits so that, if needed, you can return. But my child, there is no true entering without releasing some measure of control. Not because I want you to be weaker, but because I want you to move from control to trust. Control says, if everything follows my plan, I will be fine. Trust says, even when the plan changes, I am still here, and only trust can carry you into places where old maps no longer work. The cost of entering is not meaningless loss, it is an exchange. You exchange familiarity for depth. You exchange the feeling of holding it all together for being upheld. You exchange absolute control for precise guidance. I know what you fear most, fearing that once you step forward, you cannot return as before, fearing that you will choose wrongly and pay the price, fearing the loss of what you worked so hard to protect. But my beloved, what I invite you into is not a blind leap. It is a step with enough light for each step. As it is written, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. I do not show you the entire road so you will not return to the illusion of control. I give you enough light to walk without falling. Fear is not condemned by me, it is trained by me. When fear is placed in its proper position, it slows you down so you can listen, makes you careful enough to seek my counsel, and humbles you enough to receive help. But when fear takes the wheel, it magnifies risks, shrinks grace, and convinces you that standing still is safety. I tell you this truth, standing still in a season when I am calling you to move forward is not safe. It is a delay whose cost will be greater. I do not push you into recklessness. I invite you into ordered courage, the courage to step forward when I have prepared you sufficiently so that you will not be swallowed. There are things you must leave behind, old ways of thinking, defense mechanisms that once saved you but have now become walls, relationships that exist only by habit, and rhythms of life that exhaust you yet feel familiar. I know that leaving hurts, because it touches the identity you built in order to survive. But I do not break you and abandon you. I loosen the tight layers so you can breathe. And when you dare to move through fear without letting it control you, you will realize this: the control you release does not disappear. It is entrusted to me, the one who sees farther down the road than you do. My child, when I speak of a door, I am not speaking of a path without trials. I am speaking of a guarded way. And Michael appears in this story not as a symbol of ease, but as a mark of protection. A guarded path does not mean the wind stops blowing or the rocks stop falling. It means you are not swallowed. There are forces that seek to panic you, to bend your choices, to push you toward costly shortcuts, and it is precisely there that the guarding becomes clear. You remain standing. You remain awake. You retain the capacity to choose what is right. Michael is an image you must hold fast. Protection does not remove the battle. It sets boundaries for the battle. There are attacks that are not permitted to cross over. There are doors that are not permitted to close. There are people who are not permitted to touch what I am building in you. Not because you are more special than others, but because you are in the right place at the right time within a holy sequence that I have arranged. That sequence is not random. It has a clear order, and you will recognize it when you look back. That sequence begins with preparation. Before the door appears, I have been quietly adjusting you, your pace, your motives, how you see yourself, your habits, your principles. There are months when you felt slow, as if held back, In truth, I was laying the foundation. Preparation does not always look like action. Often it looks like patience. And the impatient often miss the door because they fail to recognize that the slowness itself is what makes them steady enough to walk through. Then comes encounter. Not every meeting is a key, but there will be meetings that fit. They fit in timing. They fit in values. They fit in direction. You will notice that these encounters do not need display or fanfare. They arrive naturally. Right when you are ready to hear and to be heard. The people you meet will not pull you away from your principles. They will resonate with what I have already planted. And here, too, you will see protection at work. Mistimed connections no longer have permission to linger. They fall away on their own when the light is sufficient. Next comes confirmation. I do not send you forward in vagueness. Confirmation comes in many forms, an unusual peace in the midst of tension, the convergence of wise counsel, small but durable openings, the repetition of the same direction from independent sources. You do not need sensational signs, you need consistency. When many streams flow in the same direction, you know you are not imagining it. And Michael is there not to intimidate you, but to keep confirmation from being distorted by fear or pride. Finally comes action. This is where many people stop. They love preparation. They enjoy encounters. They seek confirmation, but they fear the step. My child, a guarded path does not walk itself for you. Protection does not cancel responsibility. It makes responsibility possible. When you step, you do not step alone. And as you step, you will see this. The forces that would swallow you are held back. Small mistakes are corrected early. Slips are caught, so they do not become long falls. That is guarding. I want you to remember this. The door I open is not open for display. It is open so you may serve in the right place, grow at the right pace, and keep your soul intact amid expansion. A guarded path does not promise a life without hardship. It promises that you will not lose yourself. And that is the deepest blessing. When you walk through the door with fear brought into the light, with sufficient preparation, with fitting encounters, with steady confirmation, and with courageous action, you will know this is not chance. This is a holy arrangement at work, and you are walking within it, protected so you may complete your part. Now pray as follows, beloved Father. I come before you not with the strength I once put on, nor with the words I used to hide my weariness, but with my true self in this very moment. I confess that there have been times when I wanted to skim past, to avoid, to ignore your gentle calling, not because I did not believe, but because I was afraid to face the truth within me. Grant me the grace to remain with you, to remain with the truth, to remain with my own soul. Do not let me use busyness to escape, reason to defend myself, or numbness to endure. Give me the courage to stop, to breathe, and to whisper, Father, I am here. Father, I realize that I did not drift away from you in one great moment, but slipped little by little through overcrowded schedules, through disappointments left unnamed, through quiet comparisons, through days of self-blame I did not even recognize as such. Forgive me for allowing my heart to lose its sensitivity to what is holy, for growing accustomed to living without truly listening. Touch the places where I have become numb, not to cause me more pain, but to restore my ability to feel life, to feel truth, to feel your love. Give me a heart made soft again, able to tremble before the light and able to be still when healing is needed. Father, I acknowledge that I have built walls to protect myself, each brick a broken expectation, a prayer that seemed to fall into silence, a weariness no one understood. I thought those walls kept me safe, but today I see that they have imprisoned me away from love. Grant me the grace to lower those walls, not by force, but by consent. Teach me to trust that I do not need to defend myself against you. Give me the courage to open the door for the light to enter, and to remain when that light begins to reveal the things I have avoided. Father, I do not want to return in shame. I want to return in truth. I am tired. I am empty. I doubt, and deeper than all of that, I am afraid of being abandoned. Give me the courage to name my condition honestly without fear of condemnation. Teach me that you do not demand that I be strong immediately. You ask that I be real. Free me from the pressure to appear fine, to say the right words when my heart is not yet steady. Give me the safety to speak truthfully with you, trusting that the truth will not push you away, but will draw you even closer. Father, teach me that faith is not always a grand emotion, but small and faithful actions taken rightly. Teach me how to remain, not through passivity, but through realignment. One exhale, one short prayer, one decision not to run. As James 4:8 says, draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. Let me believe that even one small step toward you is enough for heaven to move closer to me. Guard me from haste disguised as zeal, and give me enough peace to step forward with courage. Father, I consent to let you touch the places I avoid the most, the memories I hide, the pain I suppress, the emotions I am afraid to face. Help me trust that you do not come to remind me of guilt in order to crush me, but to heal me in order to lift me up. Help me stop letting shame drive me. Stop believing that I must pay a price in order to be loved. Rebuild within me a new covenant written in deep consent, grounded in trust that you are safe, and sustained by hope that I can be healed at the root. Father, amid the many voices echoing within me, teach me to discern your voice, the voice of fear, and the voice of the enemy. Help me recognize which voice leads me back to life, which causes me to shrink, and which distorts the truth to make me despise myself. Teach me to discern by fruit what brings peace together with courage, and what produces restlessness and despair. Grant me silence deep enough to hear the voice that carries authority, and wisdom to pause when I need to pause. Father, I carry a deep fracture within the belief that I tried and still was not chosen, that perhaps you did not choose me. Break that lie with your truth. As Jeremiah 2:9-11 declares that you have plans for peace and hope for me. Let me believe that delay is not rejection, but preparation. Heal my identity from being defined by outcomes, and set me firmly on the foundation of your unchanging love. Father, teach me to distinguish between responsibility and self-punishment. Grant me the grace to take my part in the truth without attacking myself. As Romans 8:1 says, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Let me live in that freedom, the freedom to correct, to apologize, to change, without the crushing weight of shame. Lead me out of the cycle of self-punishment and into the process of renewal, where each small step is taken in peace and hope. Father, I thank you that I no longer have to live in search of an identity, but can live from an identity that has been healed. As 2 Corinthians 5:17 declares that in Christ all things have become new. Let me walk in that new rhythm of life without strain, without panic, without managing myself through anxiety. Make me faithful to truth more than to speed, steadfast more than impressive. Let my obedience flow from love rather than fear, and let my life become a quiet testimony that your grace truly has the power to renew. I offer this prayer in the holy name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so that together we can build a strong and growing community of faith.